let's just move to Sea Change.
Yeah.
Tell us about how that came about.
It was a sort of strange thing. Deb Cox had come to me and said she wanted to do a program out of Byron Bay. She ended up doing a program called East of Everything that was sort of her original intention for Sea Change. And I wasn't all that interested, but I like Deb, and I sort of spoke to Sue Masters at the ABC, who wanted me to write a series for them. And she said she wanted a legal... and so I'd sort of agreed to help Deb with it a bit. And Sue Masters said she'd like to do a legal series. And I said, oh, that's weird because I've just got one in my back pocket, set in Byron Bay. And then I went to Deb and said, look, do you mind if she's a magistrate rather than running a pub, Laura? And she went, yes, I would hate that. And I convinced her by taking Deb to a whole lot of courts and seeing really petty small cases. And what I loved about these cases was they spoke to bigger themes. They were so small, but they spoke to all the big stuff of life. And I think stylistically that's what I like. I like what seems to be a small idea blossoming into a big idea. And it was at the time in Australia when Australia was obsessed with corporate greed and power and money, and thank God those times have gone. And Deb and I just wanted to represent a life that was about underachievement, about the nobility of underachievement. And
it's like a little bit of a Burwood kind of theme.
Yeah. I was coming back to Burwood at this point. And I wanted to do a story that, for me, my great criticism of the left is we can never represent an interesting point of view. We're narky. We say, oh, that's not right, and that should be Madam Chairperson, and we're finicky. And we never express what's good about ordinary life. And I think that's what I wanted to do with Sea Change. I wanted to actually present in disguise a political argument which says, lower your expectations, talk to people, enjoy your life. In the end, it became about property values in the coast. But for a while, I think it actually was what people wanted to see. And what helped the series enormously for me is Deb and I and Sue Masters, we went up around Byron Bay looking at it. And I don't know how many people have been to Byron. It's very beautiful. It's ridiculously beautiful, but it wasn't what I wanted to get across. And I was really helped, but the ABC couldn't afford to do it. And we went instead on a location survey down to Barwon Heads, and I immediately saw it, and I immediately thought, this is the kind of asbestos fibro houses we used to go to when I was a kid and used to really enjoy ourselves. And that's what I thought, this is it. This is a perfect place to set the series. It's not, you have to work to make it good. If you go to Byron, you don't have to work to make it good. You just become an iridologist and sit on the sand. But that sort of area of Victoria is so beautiful but not immediately accessible. And I think that's what made the series.
What about that beautiful little coda that was at the end of each ep with that boy?
Do you know, that was my idea, and I did it on the day. I was sitting and I was watching the two actors playing, Kevin and Trevor, and I just looked at them. They just had a kind of natural ease about them, and we were a bit short on an episode. And I just went up to the director and said, "Can you get them to say that?" And they did, and we loved it, and we thought, well, that should be the coda for every episode. I just often made them up on the spot.
So, Andrew, with Sea Change, you were an executive producer as well?
Yeah, I pretty much co-wrote with Deb. You wrote a couple, Matt wrote, but I think I wrote 33 of the 39 episodes. Yeah, with Deb, and
And what is an executive producer?
it really depends. It's a title that's lost its shape. It used to be the most important person on the block, which is why I claimed the title. And everyone would work to you. Now they give it away to the mentally challenged child of the of the owner of the station. It's. There's a phalanx. I'm doing a movie now, and I keep seeing the names of executive producers and producers who
It's
people
got
have never
Junior
met.
afterwards.
Yeah.
There's someone,
It's kind of
Andrew Knight Jr.
Yeah, yeah, kind of interesting because you make these things, and you're so busy driving the boat and trying not to hit rocks and things, and then occasionally you just look behind and there's a whole lot of people on the back of your boat water skiing and waving to the crowd, and they're usually executive producers and producers, and you've never seen them. I don't know who these people are, but. You only see them on awards nights. They get up and thank you, and it was a wonderful working. And you go, oh, was it? No. It's a strange phenomenon.
Tell me about where the writer is on that hierarchy. 'Cause
The reason I took up producing was at the end of Spotswood. I went to the cast party, and I was 28 years old. So it's just 4 or 5 years back, and. I went back to this party, and there's a big nightclub, and there was this big Maori bouncer on the door, and he had a list, and I came up to him, and I was pretty cock of myself, and I said, Andrew Knight, and he went, no, mate, nope. And I said, no, I've got to be there. I co-wrote this. And he went, not on that list, mate. Sorry, off you go. And I said, can you ask inside? And he finally and reluctantly opens this door, and there's thumping music going boom, 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 boom out. And you hear this Maori voice yelling across this nightclub saying, is it all right if we let the writer in? And I thought that became emblematic of where writers stand in the food chain. And I immediately went out. I worked. I did a production job at Crawford's for 2 or 3 years. I decided I didn't want to write at Crawford's because I wasn't really keen on what they were writing. But I thought it would be really useful to understand the production process. So I did a lot of different jobs at Crawford's on lots of different projects, I kind of worked out how you put and did things and what schedules meant and what budgets meant, and I found it really useful when I came to write.
Are you good with money?
I used to be, but if you're going to work creatively, you've really got to cleave your brain away from that.
Yeah.
I find it such a wrestle. When I'm producing something, it's a real wrestle. And you just have to go, because you find it limits you as a writer, and then it limits you as a producer. You're going, oh, I don't want to cut that. That's really important. That should happen. I've just produced a movie I wrote and or adapted, and we came in on budget, but just. It's...
Yeah, they're quite different sides of your brain,
very different
aren't they?
sides of the brain. I used to actually have a reasonable left side. I have almost none now. I'm only basic motor skills now.
So, all of your,
I'll go to the 4th class now.
all of your telly series, which one are you most proud of?
I don't know. It's sort of weird. I was down at Aries. Hanny and I go down to Aries often, not together. She's happily married. But we do catch up. But I was down at Airies one night and I got a phone call from a friend of ours who said there's a bushfire out the back. And I was meant to go to Adelaide Writers' Festival, and I was doing this session where they asked me to come and talk about all the work that I loved that I'd done. And so at the time I got this phone call, I was trawling through all the shows I'd ever done. And Nikki rang me and said, there's a fire out the back of you. I think it's going to be okay. And I said, oh, look, I'll leave, because I had my daughter with me. And she said, you can't leave because the roads are blocked off either side. So I thought, great, I'm going to... and I went up on the roof and I looked at this fire and you could see flames leaping up. And I went down...
It's like the 1983 bushfires.
No, this is later. This was actually the thing.
Another
It was a fire, but it was blowing the other direction. But I sat and was watching this stuff thinking, I'm going to burn to death and there's nothing I've done that I really like. I think the one I really most liked was a thing I did, a mini-series I did called After the Deluge. Unfortunately, it played on a commercial network and no one really saw it. But, actually, that's not true. About 1.5 million people saw it. But it was, I thought it was pretty good. And I loved what Rake did. I loved the fact that people did relate to it. I went to a party once, and this woman came up to me and she said, she had no idea who I was, and she said, have you seen that series Rake? Oh, no, sorry, Sea Change. And I'm always wary when people say that, because I'm waiting to get it abused. So I said, yeah, an episode or two, yeah. And then she proceeded to extol its virtues. And then I said, well, actually, I wrote it. And she went, yeah. And it's about, and then she proceeded to describe episodes to me. And I said, no, I really did write it. I'm Andrew Knight. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, I know who you are. And she couldn't have cared less. She was going to tell me the whole story of Sea Change. And I thought, in the end, I walked away and thought, that's wonderful. Because once you write something, you had it with Hotel Sorrento and various things you've done, all of a sudden it becomes public property. It's not yours anymore, it's theirs. And everyone has a different view of it and a different way that they read it and things. So, it didn't belong to Deb or I, it was just out there. And that I liked.
So we should just talk about Rake, because everybody's watching it and loving it. Whose idea was that?
It started with Peter Duncan and Richard Roxburgh had wanted to do a telemovie. They'd heard from Charlie Waterstreet a case about Charlie Waterstreet had just defended, I can't put this in a nice way, a dog fucker. And Peter was fascinated by the idea that you would defend this person. And he rang me and he said, look, the ABC want to do a couple of telemovies. Would you write one and I'll write one? And I said, sure, but every time the ABC hears that I'm involved with something, they want to turn it into a series. And it ended up turning into a series, which meant rethinking it a lot. And I really didn't want to do another series at that time, but I loved the whole idea of doing a series about a man who defended people who were indefensible, because he was largely indefensible himself. And it wasn't warm and gooey like Sea Change.
So you're actually very non-judgmental about people's foibles.
Oh, you and I are the same. I think the thing that we as writers love is people's faults. As a writer, you're never interested in people's good points.
Well, why are good people boring?
I don't know. It's not even that they're boring. It's just that that's not the interesting part of them. What you're actually interested in a writer is what their flaw is, because that's a kind of conduit to who they are. That's what they're trying to cover up. And I mean, you're not doing it for any noble reason except to exploit them. But it is... and you certainly wouldn't come to a writer for... I mean, writers are, more flawed than any other species on Earth. But when you start to write, it's that thing that you were talking about with character. You're trying to find out what the essence of someone is. And the essence of someone is essentially the flaw, I reckon. It's a thing that if you work out what they're trying to hide from you, you go, oh, right, okay, I think I know who you are now. Whereas, everyone's nice to their children and, but kind of get that intro, get that twist on someone, get that thing you can actually grab onto, you can kind of write them.
So do you think that people have one essential flaw?
No, I've got 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing that interests me is the way in which we all have these kind of deep contradictions, so that you will find that there is someone who is, doing very good work in the third world or something's really horrible to their mum in Moorabbin, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely.
So when you're like, say you're just out about in your life and you're invited to a dinner party or something, are you
I'm never invited to a dinner party.
No, well, that's understandable. But say you were invited to a dinner party, are you staring at people thinking about what is your essential flaw? Maybe that's why people worry that you will be doing that, which is why you don't get invited.
No, not at all. No. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, we'll be there Saturday night. There's 9 of us. No, not at all. I actually think it's the thing you have in common. It's a thing like old-time friends. Hanny and I have known each other for 702 years. Hanny knows every single one of my flaws, which are manifest, but we still get along. And that's... and that's sort of what I think. I think when you actually know someone, you know everything about them. You know what's good and what's bad and what's there. And that's what, as a writer, you're trying to do. You're trying to wrestle with all that into some sort of shape. And, yeah, no, I am looking for people's flaws. Yeah.
Okay, I've just got some really brief, big question ticket items, and then we'll have questions. Bruno's just given me the 5-minute mark. Okay, so which writer do you most admire apart from me?
Oh, I was going to say Hanny Rosie. It's the kind of thing you want to say, something really pretentious, like some 11th century French. Yeah,
you can say the man who wrote Hey Dad.
That was probably me. No, I really like Beckett. But film writing, you know who I really like, and it's not fashionable. I really like William Goldman. He wrote a lot of very big commercial films like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and All the President's Men, and he wrote a wonderful thing that my kids all grew up on called, what was it, The Princess Bride. But he wrote it, I think I like him because he was he was the script editor on Good Will Hunting and things, and he's a very generous man in his writing. He likes people, and he wrote a book on screenwriting, which I would recommend to anyone here who's starting out. And the first thing he says is, the first thing you need to know about the film industry is nobody knows nothing. But my all-time great favourite is Billy Wilder.
Oh, yeah.
I just love Billy Wilder because he had that ability to traverse major drama to very funny comedy. I still think that films like The Apartment and Some Like It Hot are just fantastic
Yeah,
films.
I love
And
those.
beautiful films. And he writes women really well. So everything's perfectly balanced and terrific. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a little gossipy question. So you've just written the screenplays for Jack Irish, the series of Jack Irish, and you have written and produced The Broken Shore, which is just you've just finished producing a little while ago. Tell us about Peter Temple.
He's scary. He's a wonderful writer, and I have enormous respect for him. But he's terrifying. This is being recorded, so my first encounter with Peter was the Jack Irish, when I did the first Jack Irish. The characters, it was written in the early 90s, and the characters all barracked for Fitzroy Football Club, which is now dead or is now Brisbane. And I didn't think it was appropriate that characters in Melbourne would barrack for him. And I sent him a note saying, a little bit worried about that. Would you mind if they barracked for Richmond? Just a thought, but would you mind if they barracked for Richmond? And because they're a team that at the time just lost everything. And he sent back a two-line note saying, "Fuck off, you fucking idiot. Fuck you. Fuck, I'm out of this." So I took that as a no. The truth is, I actually now have. He's a novelist, and he's he's a great novelist, and he owns his stuff. And if you're going to adapt it, adapting something is so different from writing a novel that the best single thing a writer can do is just move away, say, read my novel, watch that. I have not even seen it. But in the end, he was actually terribly nice. He really liked Jack Irish. So The Broken Shore was the one that I really worried about, because I loved that book. And it was a really hard...
I know I didn't help, because when you were working on it, I kept saying to you, I love that book. It is such a great book. And,
and then you'd say,
shut up already.
What about that scene with... And I'd say, it's not in the film. You just have to crunch everything up so hard to fit it into 100 minutes, 110 minutes. But I've got to say, it was a fabulous shoot. I had a ball. It's great making a film about pedophiles. It's so uplifting.
Okay, my final question, then, of course, we'll open it out for everybody else. But we're having a break, and then we'll open it out so you can talk amongst yourselves and think of questions. If you had to have your time again, would you come back as a writer?
I've got to say I've had a great life, but I'd probably come back as a muso. Not that I've got any musical ability whatsoever.
So this is just a little bit of an intro now to hear Andrew Knight singing.
Yeah, memories. Yeah, I'd like to work through Les Mis. The thing about writing is if you're a musician, you can't listen to a Bach cantata, you can't listen to Mozart's Requiem and think, gee, that should have been a G flat. What was he thinking? The thing about writing is it's such an imprecise science that you have a sense of what must be perfect, but you never quite get there. Even Shakespeare's plays have a whole lot of bucolic peasants that drive you... I agree. I have a whole lot of bucolic peasants saying, prithee, nuncle, what be your donkey if it not be a horse's ass? And, you're losing the will to live. And if the greatest writer in the history of the language bores you at various points, you're not going to get there yourself. So the thing is, there is a perfect form of music, and there probably isn't a perfect form with the medium we choose. It's also with music, my father was a musician and my brother was one. And, you know, whenever they were in a mood, they just sit down and play something. When you sit down to write something when you're in that mood, it's just amazing how the language just vanishes. You can never quite express what it is you're trying to say, as I'm doing a very good job of now. So, I mean, I absolutely love what we do, but it is an elusive...
Is that what keeps you there, like a sense that it's just always
Oh, look, it's the babes and money. Yeah, it's the babes and money. The drugs. The high lifestyle. No, I love what we do. I remember doing a school play. The first school play, I was in a terrible boys' school, and which, you know, featured courses in how to flush people's toilets down heads and things. And I remember doing this play and just wandering around what would have been the crappiest set in history after it had finished and thinking, this is just magical. And I got to say, every time I go onto a set, we were filming a few weeks ago down in Port Fairy and Port Campbell. We had
with the Broken Shore.
The Broken Shore. We had giant cameras and cranes, and 100 people out on set, and people bringing me coffee. And I'm thinking,
that like producer on the back of the chair.
Producer on the back of everything. I had everything, and I was thinking, it doesn't get much cooler than this. Yeah, it really doesn't. And I still just love writing stuff and seeing it happen sometimes.
Well, we might wrap it on that beautiful note. It doesn't get much cooler than this.